Welcome to Pasadena Monthly. I'm your host, Justin Chapman. Happy National Hispanic Heritage Month. After taking a look at what's been going on in Pasadena this past month, we'll speak with our guest, Pasadena Public Information Officer Lisa Derderian. But before we get started, let's check out these Pasadena media news briefs.
On October 5th, the 26th Annual Latino Heritage Parade and Festival will take place from 10 a.m. to 4 p.m. The parade begins at 10 a.m. at the intersection of Los Robles Avenue and Buckeye Street and will proceed through the streets of Pasadena before reaching the festival grounds in front of City Hall. Sponsored by the City of Pasadena and the Pasadena Latino Heritage Committee, the parade and festival serve as a testament to the rich cultural tapestry of the community, providing a platform for shared experiences and festive unity. Tune in for live coverage of the Pasadena Latino Heritage Parade on Pasadena Media's KPAS channel or on our YouTube channel. For more information about the event, visit PasadenaLatinoHeritageParade.org. The Rose Bowl Institute is hosting its 6th Annual Women's Empowerment Symposium from October 1st through the 3rd. This virtual event, held daily at 2:30 p.m., will offer attendees 2 hours of free programming led by female leaders across various fields. Designed to inspire and empower young women and men, the symposium provides opportunities to learn from successful role models. Admission is free, and participants are encouraged to submit for scholarship opportunities. At the conclusion of this 3-day event, female participants will be eligible to apply for one of 3 $2,500 scholarships generously gifted to the Rose Bowl Institute. These scholarships are available to students located in Pasadena, the state of California, and nationwide. For more information or to register for the symposium, visit rosebowlinstitute.org/programs.
In a continuing effort to advance Alzheimer's research, Huntington Medical Research Institute's HMRI invites individuals to participate in the brain aging study. For over 20 years, HMRI has focused on understanding brain aging and the onset of dementia. The study aims to develop new tests for early Alzheimer's diagnosis and improved treatments. To qualify, participants should be at least 60 years old, reside in Pasadena or nearby areas, and be cognitively healthy. The study involves a series of voluntary, non-invasive, and minimally invasive tests, including interviews about medical history. Participation requires 3 to 5 visits, each lasting 1 to 4 hours over 3 months with compensation provided. To learn more about participation, call 626-389-3421 or email brainaging@hmri.org. To learn more about Huntington Medical Research Institute, visit www.hmri.org.
Let's turn next to our lightning round of news updates. 1. New Pasadena City Council meeting times are now in effect. 5 p.m. for closed session and 6 p.m. for open session, regular business, and public hearings. The change is to accommodate the schedules of council members and the public. The council will poll residents on whether to change the day of council meetings as well. 2. Pasadena's Rental Housing Board launched its rental registry on September 23rd, as required by the Fair and Equitable Housing City Charter Amendment. The registry is a central database containing information on all rental units in Pasadena subject to rent stabilization regulations, including property information, rental information, and ownership information. All residential rental property owners and managers that are subject to that amendment are required to register their units and pay annual fees by December 22nd. The board also set the 2025 interest rate for tenant security deposits at 0.12%. And they reviewed draft regulations that would establish standards for determining when landlords can raise rents beyond the annual limit to ensure a fair return on their investment. 3. The City Council voted to approve the purchase of a $400,000 mobile observation tower for the Pasadena Police Department, which would primarily be used at Rose Bowl events, but could be used in other parts of the city at the police chief's discretion. The tower would be equipped with high-definition cameras, a 30-foot elevated platform, and ballistic protection. The city has also begun its search for a new independent police auditor to advise the 11-member Community Police Oversight Commission. Current IPA Dr. Richard Rosenthal will leave the position in January. Police Chief Gene Harris recently agreed with 11 of Dr. Rosenthal's recommendations to reform the police department's handling of officer misconduct complaints, including reinstating a community police mediation program for certain personnel complaints starting in December. The Oversight Commission also invited the Pasadena Police Officers Association to discuss its concerns about hiring practices and oversight at the Commission's October meeting following a criticism of Commission members by union members. Also, the police and public health departments announced that shootings in Pasadena dropped by 82% in the first 6 months of 2024, due in part to a targeted gang violence intervention program. 4. This month, the Rose Bowl Aquatic Center helped right a historic wrong by dedicating and renaming its recreational pool after Dr. Edna Griffin, the first black woman physician in Pasadena, the first black member of the Pasadena Chamber of Commerce, and the first woman president of the Pasadena chapter of the NAACP. Dr. Griffin led the effort to desegregate Pasadena's municipal swimming pool, the Brookside Plunge, in the 1940s. It was a long overdue recognition. 5. The council delegated the authority to the Rose Bowl Operating Company Board for hosting additional displacement events at the Rose Bowl, which are events with 20,000 or more attendees. That proposal also temporarily increased the number of displacement events from 15 to up to 25 per year through 2023. The council also approved 4 major concerts and 3 soccer matches at the Rose Bowl for next year. 6. The city was awarded $2 million federal grant from Bipartisan Infrastructure Law's Reconnecting Communities pilot program to fund the development of a master plan and specific plan for the 710 stub area. As required, the city will match that with $2 million out of the $5 million Caltrans paid to the city when it relinquished the land. The master plan process is expected to take about 2 years, and the Pacific plan is expected to take about 1 year. The Reconnecting Communities 710 Advisory Group also discussed creating a 3D model depicting the neighborhood that existed before the construction of the 710 stub, and the consultants are continuing their work on the project. 7. The council approved purchasing 17 vacant houses from Caltrans for a total price of $976,140 plus closing costs. Properties will be sold in as-is condition, and the city must resell the properties within 2 years or use them for affordable housing if not sold. The city must use proceeds from resales to finance at least 3 affordable housing units for each property sold. 8. The council held a study session on homelessness policy this month in light of the recent U.S. Supreme Court decision in the Grants Pass v. Johnson case, allowing municipal bans on camping on public property, and California Governor Gavin Newsom's recent order regarding clearing encampments on state property. The session included extensive discussions of reports by the various relevant departments that work on this issue, including housing, public health, police, fire, city attorney's office, transportation, and more. Some ideas included increasing permanent supportive housing, expanding the city's homeless outreach teams, taking over policing for the city's 6 metro stations, and establishing specialized homeless courts that would divert unhoused individuals who receive citations or low-level charges into housing and supportive services rather than jail, among others. Various council committees will discuss different aspects of this issue going forward. 9. During the first reading this month of an ordinance that would have capped individual campaign contributions at $1,000 per person in council races and $2,500 in mayoral races, the ordinance failed to pass in a 4-4 vote after Councilmember Gene Lasuda, who voted in favor of the limits in July, decided to vote against it. He told Pasadena Now he, quote, just went with his gut. And 10. In very sad news, longtime editor of the Pasadena Weekly newspaper, Kevin Urich, passed away last month at age 65 following a number of health problems. Kevin was my dear friend and mentor of 20 years. He was an old school editor and newspaperman, but he was also one of a kind. He had a deep-seated passion for the news industry and wrote and edited countless thousands of stories over the decades. His was a gritty, no-punches-pulled, exposed corruption-style journalism, but fairness was always his guiding principle. When he served as the editor of the Weekly for 21 years, from 1999 to 2020, it was the paper of record for this city. It became a truly progressive alternative news weekly that actually broke news and covered important stories that other local news outlets ignored. He also mentored countless young reporters, including myself, when I wrote for the Weekly from 2005 to 2019. His insightful and incisive editorials were must-reads every week for anyone who cared about Pasadena, and they are missed today, as is his institutional knowledge of this town. His perspective regularly shaped the ongoing public dialogue in this city. He was an informal historian of this great community. I encourage you to go read my story about Kevin in Pasadena Now, as it has a lot of information about his life and work. He will be missed. Let's welcome our guest, Lisa Derderian, Pasadena's Public Information Officer. Thank you so much for coming on the show.
Thank you for the invite.
Lisa has served as PIO since 2018. Previously, she worked for the Pasadena Fire Department for 16 years as the city emergency manager and fire public information officer. She was responsible for community emergency response team training and disaster preparedness for residents and businesses. She trained city employees in their respective disaster roles, updated the city emergency operations plans, and she works with the media on a daily basis to disseminate information and respond to their inquiries on behalf of the city. Before her tenure with Pasadena, she was the Director of Communications and Marketing for the San Gabriel Valley chapter of the American Red Cross. So, Lisa, tell us about a little bit more about your career and what led you up to Pasadena.
So I grew up in West Los Angeles and actually was dating a Beverly Hills cop who I've been married to now for 32 years. He's retired, but so I worked in West Los Angeles for a while for an all-suite luxury hotel chain when I got out of college. And just the event coordination, the meeting people, every day is different. I really enjoyed that aspect of a career and then left there after 4 years to work in entertainment public relations, which was pretty fascinating there. In some cases, it was almost like babysitting, but this goes back way to the Burt Reynolds, Lonnie Anderson. We handled their divorce. You say that now, most people are like, who? um, Jason Priestley from the show 90210, who was a big hit. So it was a lot of glamour when you're riding around in limos with them and you're going to nice events, but it was a lot of babysitting when you have to make travel arrangements and you get calls in the middle of the night if something happens and you got to come bail them out of something. And then my son was born 30 years ago today.
Wow.
And so I lived in Pasadena then and was very fortunate to get the job with the American Red Cross out of the beautiful Craven Estate, the mansion off of Madeline and Orange Grove, which is now a private home. But really enjoyed that. Networked a lot with the Pasadena Police and Fire Departments because we were in Pasadena, did a lot of events. And when the job opened up for, at that time, it was called Disaster Preparedness Coordinator. Cynthia Kurtz, the city manager at the time, implemented that title after Hurricane Katrina. So I was lucky to get that job and been here ever since. It's been many years where I look back now and I've learned so much. I've met so many great people, gone through everything from September 11th with the Red Cross to COVID with the city of Pasadena. So it's been a great career.
And what is a public information officer?
That's funny you asked that because I had a helmet with the fire department that said PIO, which is public information officer. My stepmom called me one day and said, "Is that your size, P10?" I'm like, no. So public information officer is getting information out to the public. But, I also want to emphasize it's also the internal audience because even that 5.4 earthquake we had a few weeks ago, City Hall had a pipe burst. Media attention, national media attention was focused on City Hall. So I was doing interviews for probably 3 hours straight. My point being, after 3 hours, I realized we didn't get information out to all of our 2,000 plus city employees to let them know what's going on. So it is public information, but it's also, letting our internal audience know, our community stakeholders know. So that's something I can improve on every day, just the communication aspect with so many people, especially Pasadena, that are your valuable and valued stakeholders.
And what would you say is your philosophy, your approach to the job? Your approach seems to be more open, more accessible than, for example, the previous PIO.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. I like the networking aspect. I think it's so important to get to know somebody before an incident. I learned that at the fire department to where we'd have a major incident. You get out there and you're starting to introduce yourself, whereas there's every opportunity to meet prior to. So I like getting out, the networking aspect, communicating with the public. There's so many different demographics now between social media and the press releases. So I like engaging with the media too. We have a lot of press reporters, anchor people that live in Pasadena. I have some long established relationships, which is great. So much of that is just my personality is to get out there. I could never be, and with all due respect to anybody that sits behind a desk all day, I could never do that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then what would your role as a PIO be during an emergency?
So my job right away is to get information out on the emergency, but hopefully factual information because often we get information out so quickly because we feel compelled to do that it's not right. So vetting through it, making sure we're getting it out and thinking about the demographics. I mean, my mom is in West LA. She's 83. She'd be equivalent to the little old lady in Pasadena. She refuses to learn how to text. She doesn't do social media. She'll want to turn on the TV or the radio. That's how she'll get her news. So we have to learn to get information to the media. Post on social media, because the younger generation, they want instant gratification. They want to look on their phone and see exactly what's going on.
Yeah.
So we have to just take all that into consideration. Even the boots on the ground, when we have a large earthquake, communications are impacted. Boots on the ground, volunteers, city staff knocking on doors to let people know what's going on.
And a situation like that is obviously fluid, and information is changing too.
Correct.
And should an emergency strike, what can the residents do to stay informed about what's going on, especially as you mentioned, if cell reception and electricity is knocked out?
Yeah, we take it for granted now. I mean, we pick up our cell phones, but you go to a large scale event at the Rose Bowl and you can't get reception or data because there's so many people at one time. Around New Year's, especially parade, same situation. So it's important you have redundancy built in place. So, we had a ham radio group in Pasadena. Hopefully, we'll reestablish that if we cannot use communications. Having those conversations ahead of time where to meet during a disaster if you can't communicate. We have a lot of wildfire situations throughout Southern California where cell phone towers are actually burnt to the ground. So communications are out, or smoke can get in and affect or impact the cell system. So we have to have that redundancy in place. Even the old landline phones, I still have one. I did a presentation recently. Several people raised their hands. They still have them.
Wow.
So you can still use that old school way of communicating.
We recently had a major heat wave. We had several earthquakes. What did the city do in those instances, and were there lessons learned that we can apply going forward? Or you mentioned we're always evolving and adapting to the new circumstances.
And that's where I learned from my many years as emergency manager that you can't just put the information out there. Help the people. So if we know we're opening up a cooling center, then work with transportation on, can we get extra buses? We're very fortunate in our city to have the arts buses and ways to transport, especially the more senior population. So can we get transportation involved on how we're going to get them there? Can we work with Parks and Rec? They have existing programs for seniors. Can we contact them to let them know we have the cooling center? Get it to the media. Just think about the other departments. So Parks and Rec, we have transportation. We have obviously the PIO office to get the information out. Through our council members, getting it out there is vital because they have the e-newsletters. So it's very important that we put it all together and don't just send it out. Here's what we're doing, but try to put the pieces together. And that's a part of my job I really enjoy. Like, what are we missing? What can we do better to help people get from point A to point B? And when they're there, instead of them just sitting there, let's have some board games for them. Let's, bingo, whatever the case may be, let's keep them entertained while they're there. So they'll tell their friends and they'll be encouraged to come back.
And what can residents do to be prepared for an earthquake, other emergency? People should essentially be prepared to help themselves and their neighbors, and not necessarily rely on city government or other regional governments to save them necessarily.
100%. And it's the large earthquake that is going to be where we're not going to have our fire resources. They'll be overwhelmed. Everything else, we have help from other cities, other counties, state, federal. It's the large earthquake. Everybody will be overwhelmed. And I do presentations on preparedness. I'll bump into people at the market because I live in town, and they'll go down a different aisle because they're trying to avoid me because they don't have their kits together. So, people get complacent, but we've been reminded over the course of the last month, we've had several 5.0 or greater earthquakes. It's a reminder we need to be prepared. Not just ourselves, but look out for your neighbors. During COVID, it was don't talk to your neighbors, stay away. Nobody should communicate. We need to get back to that old school face-to-face communication resources that everybody on your block has. That learn it now. So afterwards, who has search and rescue tools, who has childcare capabilities to watch kids while the parents are helping remove debris or rubble, who has medical background. Because now, it was COVID, don't talk to everybody. Now it's the neighborhood apps. That's how people communicate. Right. So we've really lost that personal connection, and a lot of the information on like a next door is good, but a lot of it, has to be vetted through, and some fact checking going on there.
What are some of the ways that residents can stay informed about city programs, events, news in a regular non-emergency scenario?
Mhm. So day to day, we have pretty robust social media. Our district liaisons, our council members are great about sending information to their constituents. We have our city website, which we try to update often,
Hmm.
which has good information. Parks and Rec has their own newsletter. The library has their own newsletters. Water and Power has theirs. So, first I thought let's bring it all under the public information office, but some people are just passionate and only want information on the library. So, we have several resources. But what I did implement is let's share in that newsletter other information too.
Right.
We have Pasadena in Focus that comes out, I think it's every 2 to 3 months
Mm.
based on the event planning. So we just had one that was released today. That's now all electronically. We will send it in the mail if requested. But that has some great information today. It's about the measures so we can educate our public about that, our community, plus all the events coming up in the next 2 months.
And folks can also sign up for like the city manager's weekly
Right,
newsletter.
city
That's
manager
another
newsletter,
option.
yes. So we have many ways of doing that. We have our local media because we'll do a press release. We send it to our local
Yeah.
media. Hopefully they put it out there. So we try to again meet those demographics.
Yeah.
The older population that maybe just wants to turn on our KPAS or Pasadena Media, and that's how they get their news, which is great because we do so much with them. Or we have the ones that just want to turn on their phone, look on social media, and that's how they'll learn about an event.
Hmm. Yeah, it seems like under you that there's been a lot more sharing and coordination of information and not centralized necessarily, but all the different departments on the same page and knowing what everyone else is doing.
Yeah, no, I
Yeah.
appreciate that. That's a compliment I greatly appreciate. And we have monthly meetings with the designated public information officers from the respective departments. The district liaisons attend. And I think that's vital to share the information so that we're aware of what's going on in their districts and they can ask questions and also get the bigger picture of what's going on throughout the city.
Hmm.
And it's, again, the good networking. So if something happens, pick up the phone and call. We already have that relationship, which is, again, so beneficial, especially in Pasadena. There's always something happening.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Or, yeah, I mean, especially with events going on.
Mm.
So it's so important that the communication is there 24/7. I mean, I get
Yeah.
calls on weekends, evenings from some council districts because constituents are upset about something, try to work through the best person in the city to contact for that.
Yeah.
Again, I enjoy that. I think because I live in town, I'm more passionate about trying to connect the dots and helping
Mhm.
people than if I didn't have that vested interest.
Sure. How is the evolving news media landscape, social media landscape, how has that changed a municipal communications officer's role and how they communicate with the public and get the word out over the past 2 decades, but really in the past few years?
Yeah, and I've been talking about being proactive about putting it out, but in the past, I've had to be reactive. We've had citizens out there. We had an incident with an employee that was in a city vehicle, blocked in somebody at the local Target.
Mm.
Several people took footage of that, started posting it, and then tagging media. I was not aware of it until I started getting numerous media calls. Now that has happened, not with a city employee, but just situations to where the public now,
Mhm.
everybody has an iPhone or a phone, I should say, right now. They get footage, they post it, that can go viral, or they'll tag media. And I get calls often about something that's happened that I'm not aware of. It could be a tree down blocking a sidewalk, and people upset. Why didn't we put it out there
Mhm.
when we didn't know? But
Right.
everybody's a reporter now, so
Yeah.
you have to really. It's hard to keep up with it all.
Mhm.
But once we're aware of it, then I work with some great, city employees that will then give me the facts and we'll go and then clarify it on our city social media channels.
Yeah, yeah. Residents, the public tend to assume the city is omniscient and knows everything
Right,
everywhere, but
correct.
unless we're not everywhere at all times, so
Exactly.
it's
Yeah.
got to be a two-way communication between the
Oh
residents
yeah,
and the
yeah.
city.
And we get the trolls, everyone gets
Sure.
the trolls. Our police department is amazing. I'm big fans of our police department. But we'll post something like a coffee with a cop and you get, people that post just some horrific
Mm,
things in some cases.
mm,
So we try not to let that bother us. And if somebody is out there in their not nice in the way they're responding, or we'll clarify once if need be, and then we leave it alone because
Yeah.
we don't want to get in that back and forth.
Well, Lisa, thank you so much for taking the time coming on the show.
you. I greatly
really appreciate it. You're doing a good job.
Thank you very much.
Before we go, here's this month in Pasadena history. It was this month in 1924 when the Pasadena Historical Society, now the Pasadena Museum of History, was established. It began as an exhibition featuring a collection of photographs and other artifacts of the city's early founders that were displayed at a celebration of the 50th anniversary since the arrival of the original Indiana colony in 1874. The collection was housed in the Civic Auditorium, then the Public Library, and finally the Mansion and History Center buildings at Orange Grove and Walnut that feature galleries, archives, and a lot more. Thank you all so much for joining me for this episode of Pasadena Monthly. Tune in every fourth Friday of the month at 5 p.m. Learn more at pasadenamedia.org and justindouglaschapman.com. Drop me a line at jchapman@cityofpasadena.net. We'll see you next time.